Hi, today's mini lecture covers early childhood psychosocial and emotional development. And so by early childhood, we are referring to ages 2 through 6. This stage, according to Erik Erikson, is called the initiative versus guilt stage. Erikson pointed out that the young child's self-esteem increases during this stage because of a child's expanding range of skills. Children eagerly take on new tasks and activities, or else, according to Erikson, they feel guilty when they fail or when they're criticized. Self-esteem is different from self-concept, however. Self-esteem is a contributing factor in one's self-concept. A child's gender, size, and skills are also part of self-concept, but self-esteem, on the other hand, is how a child feels about himself, while self-concept is a description of self. The major reason why self-esteem increases at this stage is due to the fact that children develop longer attention spans. This enables them to have better concentration, to develop greater persistence, and also to develop a willingness to try new things. Children here are starting to get good at things, and often they discover their talent at this age. In addition, at this stage, children are intrinsically motivated, which means that they enjoy doing many things and they naturally want to try doing many different things. For example, coloring, playing games, or simply playing are intrinsically motivating to children. On the other hand, extrinsic motivation is when a person does something because they expect a reward or recognition for doing it. It's very important to understand the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, because research has shown that if we reward something that is already intrinsically motivating, we actually undermine intrinsic motivation. In one study, a group of kindergartners was given a stack of colorful paper and markers. One group was told, if you draw a picture, you will get a reward. A second group was simply shown the colored paper and markers, and when they completed a picture, they were given a reward. A third group was not given any instructions, simply shown the paper and the markers like the second group. But when they made a picture, they were not given a reward. The outcome of the study was that the only group that drew a picture when returning to the room was the group that was not offered a reward in advance or given a reward after they drew a picture. The researchers suggest that the children began to think, it must not be worth doing if I don't get a reward for it, so I'm not going to do it. Drawing was no longer intrinsically motivating. So providing or offering a reward for something that is intrinsically motivating can erode intrinsic motivation in children. The major emotional accomplishment of the play years is learning when and how to express emotions, and this is called emotional regulation. Neurological advances in the prefrontal cortex are at least partly responsible for greater capacity for self-control that is evident by age 5. Emotional regulation begins with a control of impulses. Girls generally have less trouble with regulating externalizing emotions than boys do. Children who have externalizing problems in regulating their emotions typically lash out at other people with little or no provocation, or have frequent anger outbursts. Emotional regulation does not, however, include only being unable to control outbursts. Internalizing problems is also another way in which children display emotional dysregulation. So children who internalize problems cannot regulate strong emotions, and they have a tendency to be fearful, inhibited, or withdrawn. Girls with emotional regulation issues tend to internalize their problems, whereas boys with emotional regulation issues tend to externalize them. And stress in infancy, as you will recall from previous chapters, can cause neurological damage and can make young children physiologically unable to regulate their emotions. When a child's early emotional needs have been adequately met, he develops the capacity to feel empathy towards other people. Empathy is different from sympathy. Empathy is to feel with another person, and sympathy is to feel for another person. Empathy is a pro-social behavior. Children who were not at the receiving end of empathic caregivers or who experienced early stress are at high risk for developing forms of antisocial behavior, such as antipathy, which is a disgust for others. They're also at high risk for being aggressive towards others. By age 5, most children are deliberately pro-social or antisocial in their behavior. A factor in the development of pro-social behavior is having developed theory of mind, which is being able to take another person's perspective. Developmental psychologists distinguish 4 types of aggression. The first type is called instrumental aggression, or aggression used to obtain or to keep a desired toy or object. The second type of aggression is called reactive aggression, and this is aggression that is used in angry retaliation against another child. The third type of aggression is called relational aggression, and this is aggression that is used to cause psychological and not physical pain. The fourth type of aggression is called bullying aggression, and this is aggression that is used in an unprovoked attack on a peer. Instrumental aggression is the form of aggression that is most likely to increase between the ages of 2 and 6. Reactive aggression is usually a sign of a lack of emotional regulation. And bullying aggression is a serious form of poor emotional regulation. And adults should always intervene in cases of bullying aggression. Next, let's talk about different parenting styles and how these different parenting styles might impact a child's emotional and cognitive development. Diana Beaumarine identified 4 features that differentiate styles or patterns of parenting. So let's first look at these 4 features. The first one is warmth. How warm are parents towards their offspring? Do they express love towards one another, and how do they do that? The second feature is discipline. What are the strategies for discipline? Are the parents punitive, or are the parents more instructional in their discipline styles? The third feature is communication. How do parents communicate with their children? Do they allow children to talk, or do they allow children to question? Or are parents more are parents more militaristic in their communication? In other words, do they expect that communication is only one-sided from the parent to the child, and children are not allowed to talk back? The fourth feature is maturity expectations. And here the question is, do parents expect their children to be perfect for their age, or is there room for mistake? So based on these 4 features, Diana Beaumarine identified 3 basic patterns of parenting. The first is called Authoritarian Parents. And in this parenting style, the parents believe that their word is not to be questioned. Their word is the law. The maturity demands are very high, and the communication from child to parent is very low, and the communication is one-sided. It goes from parent to child only. So children in authoritarian families are likely to be very obedient. However, they're also just as likely to be unhappy. And longitudinal research has suggested that These children often rebel or leave home at a young age. Second parenting style that Beaumorin identified is called permissive parents. And in this setting, parents make few maturity demands on their children, but they are very nurturing, and they are very accepting, and there is lots of communication that flows two ways, between parent to child and also from child to parent. So discipline is lax, and as a result of this, children are likely to lack self-control. Research longitudinally suggests that as adults, these children are going to grow up more likely to be depressed or to fail to launch. And the third parenting style is called authoritative. And this is different from authoritarian, the first one we identified. Authoritative parents set moderate and realistic maturity demands on their children, but they do enforce the rules. They listen to their children, and yet they are also somewhat forgiving if the child falls short of the maturity expectations. Longitudinal research has suggested that children of authoritative parents are likely to be more successful, more articulate, happy with themselves, and significantly more generous with other people. Next, let's talk about punishment. In punishing a child, the first step is to be clear about what is expected and to be sure that there's a parental alliance with any other caregivers so that the punishment is not undermined. The second step in punishment is to relate punishment to the things that a child can control. For example, you would not punish a 2-year-old for having a potty training accident because biologically, most children cannot consistently regulate their bowels until they're 3. In addition, remember when children gain theory of mind. Most children gain theory of mind by age 4. So, for example, if you were to say to a 2-year-old, how do you think that makes Susie feel when you don't share with her? This would not make sense to a 2-year-old because she doesn't have theory of mind yet, and she simply cannot imagine that Susie feels anything differently than she does at the moment. So finally, remember that this stage is one of emerging self-esteem and self-confidence. And while children can understand quite a few things, they have not yet developed the ability to think logically. Parents use a variety of discipline and punishment techniques, and how the techniques work depend on the child's temperament, the parent's personality, the culture, and the relationship between the parent and the child. Although physical punishment often appears to work at the moment, long-term research finds that children who are physically punished are much more likely to become more aggressive towards their peers or siblings. Furthermore, psychological control, and that is where love is withdrawn or a child is personally criticized for their behavior. Psychological control damages a child's initiative, which is the focus of this stage. A commonly used type of punishment that is safe and healthy is called timeout. And this is when a child is removed from others and required to stop all activity and sits in a quiet place for 1 year for each year, for 1 minute for each year of the child's age. So today we have talked about the emotional development of early childhood. The hallmark of this stage is having achieved emotional regulation and the ability to feel empathy for other children or other adults. A host of potential issues can be seen in children who do not have emotional regulation, and some of these are aggression and antipathy. We have also reviewed 3 different parenting styles and techniques that have been shown to have some impact on a child's long-term emotional development.